The lunar listening post was a quiet place. It was a series of connected modules stuck to the gray rock of the moon, filled with the soft hum of computers and the gentle hiss of air recyclers. Park Jun liked the quiet. It helped him listen. His job was simple. He sorted through the endless noise of space, the natural radio waves from stars, the coded chatter of ships, the official broadcasts from the Galactic Concord. He was a junior officer, which meant he often got the boring jobs. Right now, his task was to analyze old signals for a training exercise. His supervisor had given him the raw data from the Vel distress call. A good lesson in why we follow Concord protocols, the supervisor had said. See how messy and emotional it is? Our job is to filter that out. Jun started his work. He saw exactly what the Concord had seen. The primary audio track was a painful, high-frequency shriek. The sensor data showed the clear signs of a planet being torn apart. It was terrible, but it was also straightforward. The Concord's dismissal made a cold, logical sense. But Jun had always been curious. He was the kind of person who took things apart just to see how they worked. The official report listed over 70% of the transmission's data as background noise and non-essential harmonic residue. That was a lot of noise. He decided to look at the noise. He isolated the so-called harmonic residue. On his screen, it looked like a messy, colorful sound wave. He played it through the speakers. It was a strange, warbling set of tones, hidden beneath the scream. It didn't sound like language. It sounded like sad music. Remembering a friend in another department, he sent a copy of the file with a note. Yuna, does this sound like anything to you? It's from that Vel call everyone dismissed. Choi Yuna was a xenolinguist. Her job was to understand how aliens might think and talk. She worked in a lab filled with images of alien symbols and sound graphs. She got Jun's message an hour later. She listened to the harmonic file. Her brow furrowed. It wasn't speech, but it was also not random. She called Jun. It's structured, she said. The tones repeat in a complex pattern. It's not a message made of words. It's more like a song with layers. What about the visual data? Jun asked. They flagged the light frequencies as random background flashes. Yuna pulled up the full transmission. She muted the horrible scream and ignored the burning planet sensors. She focused only on the light. The Vel homeworld before the attack was beautiful. The initial, peaceful part of the signal showed a world with vast, crystal forests that caught the sunlight. The Vel themselves were hard to see clearly, shimmering, light-based beings that moved in slow, graceful groups. As the attack began, the light changed. The clear, bright patterns broke into frantic, jagged pulses. Yuna slowed the data down. Frame by frame, she watched. The light isn't just them reflecting their sun, she whispered, more to herself than to Jun. They're making it. The light is them. She started to see it. The Vel's bodies were like living prisms. Their communication wasn't sound-based like humans, or even chemical-based like some species. It was visual. Every pulse, every shift in color and brightness was a thought, a feeling, a piece of information. The horrible scream in the audio channel was probably just a side effect, the raw sound of their planet's atmosphere burning, picked up by their sensors and included by mistake. The real distress call was in the light. Yuna worked through the night. She created a program to map the light patterns. She started with the early, peaceful images. She saw slow, rolling waves of soft green and blue, likely representations of their forests and rivers. She saw complex, slow-moving golden fractals that might be a family unit or a community thought. Then she reached the attack. The patterns shattered. The beautiful fractals broke into sharp, stabbing reds and blinding whites of pain. The sequences became short, repeated, and desperate. They were not asking for help in a way the Concord could understand. They were showing what was happening. They were broadcasting their own death. The final, repeating pattern was the hardest to watch. It was a simple, fading pulse of a single deep blue frequency, growing weaker with each cycle. Yuna's program couldn't translate it into words, but it could interpret the emotional context from the pattern structure. The readout on her screen said, concept, finality, concept, memory, Concept: absence. They're not calling for rescue, Una said, her voice thick in the quiet of the lab. They think no one is coming. They're saying goodbye. They're sending their last memory out into the dark so someone, somewhere, might know they were here. June sat in his quiet station, looking at Una's data. He felt a cold hole open in his stomach. The Concord had seen a spreadsheet. They had seen an ecological event. But he and Una were looking at a last will and testament written in light. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking song for an audience they believed did not exist. He thought about the official dismissal notice. Local conflict. Non-interference protocol. The words seemed hollow and ugly now. He saved all of Una's findings into a single file. This wasn't just noise. This was proof of a soul. He knew he had to send it up the chain. It wouldn't change the Concord's mind. They had already voted. But maybe, just maybe, it would change someone else's. He marked the file as urgent. The subject line read, Oris distress signal mistranslation of intent. He attached Una's visual analysis and her notes. He looked at the send button for a long moment. This would cause trouble. It would make people angry. It would say the great and wise Concord had missed the point completely. He pressed send. The message left the quiet moon and shot toward Earth. It was a very small signal against a galaxy of indifference. But it was a signal that carried a song. The command center of the Earth Defense Fleet flagship Gwangju was a place of soft light and hard decisions. Commander Lee Hanna stood before the main viewing screen, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. On the screen, two things were displayed side by side. One was the official Galactic Concord Bulletin, its elegant symbols stating the dismissal of the Oris situation. The other was the file from Park June and Choi Una, a silent, heartbreaking video of dying light. She had watched it 5 times. She saw the peaceful, swirling colors of the Vel's normal existence. She saw the fracturing, the panic, the final, fading blue pulse. The analysis text glowed beside it. Not a call for aid, a final testament, a cry of witness. Her second-in-command, Kim Min-soo, stood beside her, his face grim. The science team has verified the analysis, he said, his voice low. The xenolinguists agree. The Concord didn't just refuse a request. They ignored a genocide and called it policy. Hannah nodded slowly. She knew what was coming next. The Earth Council was in emergency session, their faces filling smaller screens around the room. The atmosphere was tense, split right down the middle. Counselor Park, an older man with a weary face, spoke first. Commander, we have the report. It is moving. It is a tragedy. But the facts have not changed. The Vel are not our allies. We have no treaty. The Concord has ruled. Their ruling is morally bankrupt, said Counselor Kim, a younger woman with sharp eyes. This isn't about treaties. This is about what's right. The Concord saw numbers. Our people saw a people. And what will we do? Counselor Park shot back. Send our fleet? Our entire fleet? To fight a known predator force for a stranger? The Reavers will tear our ships apart. We could lose everything. Our place in the Concord, our economy, our ships, our people. All for a light show. The word light show hung in the air like poison. Hannah saw Min-soo stiffen beside her. It is not a light show, Hannah said, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the argument. It is a language. They are sending us their last memory. They believe they are alone in the universe. The Concord has proven them right. Our duty is to Earth, Counselor Park insisted, not to philosophical ideas about memory. We are a fringe member. We cannot afford to become pariahs. Counselor Kim leaned forward. And what is Earth if we see this and do nothing? We become the ones who look away. We join the Concord in their silence. Is that the legacy we want? To be the species that calculated the cost of a soul and found it too high. The debate raged. They argued about logistics, about the Reavers' known strength, about the month-long journey to Oris. They argued about sanctions and isolation. It was all true. Every risk Counselor Park named was real. The mission was, from any strategic view, suicide. Hannah listened, but her eyes kept drifting back to the fading blue pulse on the main screen. She thought of history lessons from a scarred planet. She thought of pictures from a terrible past, of people in desperate need, and of the world that had often been too slow, too bureaucratic, too afraid to act. She heard the same arguments now, wrapped in cleaner, future clothes. The council voted. It was a tie. The decision, by law, fell to the commander of the defense fleet in matters of direct deployment. They all turned to her. Lihanna felt the weight of every life under her command. She saw the faces of her pilots, her engineers, her soldiers. She saw the fragile blue marble of Earth behind the counselors' heads. To stay was safe. To stay was smart. To stay was to live by the Concord's cold math. But she also saw the silent, fading light of the Vel. A song sung into a void they thought was empty. She took a slow breath. The Concord, she said, is not wrong. A flicker of relief went through Counselor Park's face. Hannah continued. By their logic, they are perfectly correct. The cost is too high. The benefit is zero. It is the only rational choice. She paused, meeting the eyes of each person on the screens. But humanity has never been praised for its rationality. We have been called emotional, volatile, unpredictable. We have made our greatest mistakes and our greatest triumphs because of it. Today, I choose to be irrational. She turned to Kim Min-soo. Captain Kim, sound general quarters. Mobilize the entire fleet. Every ship that can hold a weapon or carry a shield. Prepare them for a long-range assault jump to the Aura sector. The command center erupted into a sudden buzz of activity. Alerts began to chime. Min-soo, a soldier to his core, snapped a sharp "Yes, Commander," and turned to bark orders. On the screens, the counselors were stunned. Counselor Kim had a fierce, proud tear in her eye. Counselor Park looked devastated. You will destroy us, he whispered. Or define us, Hannah replied quietly. She addressed the room. This is not a mission of conquest or even of victory. The odds of victory are zero. This is a mission of witness. They sent their final song into the dark. We are going to answer it. We are going to stand between the Reavers and the last of the Vel, and we are going to say, we see you. You are not alone. Even if it is only for a minute. Even if it is the last thing we do. She turned her back on the political screens, her focus now entirely on her crew and her ships. The Gwangju hummed with a new, urgent energy. Across the solar system, ships began to power up, breaking from their orbits, gathering at the rally point. They were not a grand armada. They were cargo haulers with welded-on guns. Old patrol cutters and refitted asteroid miners. A handful of real warships, small and tough. It was a desperate fleet. They were going to shout into the galaxy's silence. And Lihanna, standing alone at the center of it all, carried the terrible, quiet weight of knowing she was leading them all to a fire, just to prove that someone could still feel its heat. The silence of the jump was the worst part. Earth's fleet, a ragged collection of ships, was now in the gray nowhere of faster-than-light travel. For 30 days, there would be no stars, no planets, only the eerie hum of the jump engines and the oppressive knowledge of what waited at the end. Aboard the flagship Gwangju, Commander Lihanna moved through the corridors. She made herself visible. She ate in the mess hall with the crew. She asked engineers about engine stress. She listened to young soldiers talk about their families. She carried the burden of their lives quietly, her face calm, but her eyes were like dark stone. In the main training room, Kim Min-soo drilled the Marine units. The simulations were brutal. The data they had on the Reavers was clear. Their ships were faster, their weapons hit harder, their shields were stronger. In a straight fight, the human fleet would last minutes. Forget straight fights. Min-soo barked at a group of exhausted soldiers. He pointed to a simulation of a broken asteroid field near the Vel homeworld. We are not here to win a war. We are here to buy time. Your job is to be annoying. Your job is to be a rock in their shoe. You hide here. You hit from there. You run. You make them waste time and energy chasing you. Every second they spend on us is a second not spent on the Vel. Every second is a victory. In the science lab, Choi Yuna worked with a different kind of weapon. Her screens were covered in the beautiful, tragic light language of the Vel. Her team had built large projector arrays, designed to be set up on a planet's surface. They were not guns. They were loudspeakers for a language of light. "We have to tell them something," Yuna explained to her technicians. "When we get there, they will be terrified. They will see more ships arriving and think it is the end. We have to say, friend. We have to say, shelter." She showed them a sequence she had built. A soft, pulsing green orb, surrounded by a gentle golden shield. It was her best guess for safe haven. "What if they don't understand?" a young technician asked. "We have to try," Yuna said. "Or we are just another violent noise in their sky." Down in communications, Park Jun felt useless. The ship was filled with the buzz of military preparation, and his job was mostly done. He had found the song. Now others had to fight for it. He spent his extra time monitoring long-range channels. The news from the galaxy was not good. The Galactic Concord had acted swiftly. Official notices flooded the networks. Earth's fleet was declared rogue. All trade with Earth was suspended. Earth's membership in the Concord was under review. Any ship aiding them would be punished. It was a clean, political cut. Humanity was being removed from the community for its emotional outburst. Worse were the other voices. Some alien news networks laughed. They called the humans suicidal poets. Others were angry, saying humanity was disrespecting galactic law and order. A very few were quietly curious. But no one offered help. The silence around them was total. One evening, Hannah found June in the mess hall, staring at a cup of cold coffee. She sat down across from him. "You look like you lost something," she said. "I feel like I started this," June said quietly. "I sent the file, and now we're all out here, alone. Everyone hates us." Hannah shook her head. "You didn't start this. The Reavers started it. The Concord continued it by looking away. All you did was hand us a pair of glasses so we could see clearly." She looked around at the other crew members, talking, playing cards, trying to seem normal. "They hate us today. Maybe they will hate us tomorrow. But in 100 years, when they tell this story, they will not talk about the Concord's trade sanctions. They will ask, 'Who answered the call?' The answer will be, 'We did.' That is the only thing that matters now." The days dragged on. The tension grew. People grew quieter. They wrote long letters home, knowing they might not be delivered for months or ever. They checked and rechecked their equipment. The final briefing was held on the 29th day. The senior officers gathered on the Guangzhou's bridge. The main screen showed the tactical plan. It was not a battle plan. It was a distraction plan. The fleet would split into small, fast groups. They would hit the Reavers from all sides, draw their fire, lead them on chases through the debris around the planet. They were to be ghosts, wasps, shadows. The main goal was clear: get the unarmed landing ships to the surface. Get Yuna's projectors set up. Get the Marines to form a perimeter around the last Vel. Hold the line for as long as possible. "They have more of everything," Minsu said to the assembled officers. "So we will be something they don't have. We will be stubborn. We will be illogical. We will care about something they see as scrap. Use that. Use their confusion." When the meeting ended, Hannah stayed on the bridge. She looked at the countdown clock. 12 hours until the jump ended. 12 hours until they returned to normal space and to war. Kim Minsu came to stand beside her. "The crew is ready," he said. "They're scared, but they're ready." "Are we doing the right thing, Minsu?" Hannah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time she had voiced the doubt aloud. He was silent for a moment. "I don't know if it's right," he said honestly, "but I know it's not wrong. And for me, that's enough. It has to be." Hannah nodded. That was all they had now. It wasn't about victory. It was about refusing to be wrong. It was about breaking the terrible, logical silence of the universe with one loud, defiant human noise. The jump drives began their low whine, powering down. The gray nothing outside the windows would soon be replaced by the hard light of stars and the fire of enemy weapons. The long, quiet jump was over. The gray nothing of the jump dissolved with a sickening lurch. Stars snapped back into place, sharp and cold. The blue-green marble of the Vel homeworld filled the main viewport of the Guangzhou. It was not blue-green anymore. A collective breath caught in the command center's throat. The planet was a scarred, ashen ball. Vast sections of its surface were blackened, glowing dully with the fading heat of firestorms. Where the crystal forests had been, according to Yuna's files, there were now only giant, dark sores. The atmosphere was a dirty smear, and there was the Reaver Armada. They hung in high orbit like a swarm of metal insects. Their ships were not beautiful. They were jagged and spiked, looking as if they had been torn from asteroids and sharpened. They moved with a slow, hungry purpose. Below them, tendrils of energy reached down to the planet like roots, sucking the last resources from the dying world. They're in the final harvest phase, Kim Minsu said, his voice flat. They're cleaning up. Scans, Hannah ordered, her own voice surprisingly steady. A young officer at a sensor panel swallowed hard. Concentrated life signs on the planet's southern continent. One pocket. It's faint. The rest is just residual heat and chemical decay. He paused. The Reaver fleet outnumbers us 4-1. Their energy signatures are significantly stronger. On the main communication channel, a signal came in. It was not on a military band, but on a wide public broadcast channel, the one the Concorde used for announcements. A voice, synthesized and dripping with bored contempt, filled the bridge. Unidentified fleet, you have entered an active harvest zone. You are in violation of local control. Identify yourselves or be removed. Hannah leaned forward. She opened a channel broadcasting on the same wideband. Reaver Command. This is Commander Lee Hannah of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are engaged in the mass killing of the Vel species. You will cease your operations immediately and withdraw from this system. There was a moment of silence. Then, a dry, crackling sound came over the channel. Took Hannah a second to realize it was laughter. Earth, the voice said. The emotional ones. We read the Concorde bulletins. You are not wanted here. This biomass is claimed. Leave now or become part of the collection. The channel clicked off. On the tactical screen, a third of the Reaver fleet broke from its orbit. The ships turned, their jagged prows pointing toward the human fleet. They moved not with urgency, but with a lazy, predatory confidence. It's a brush-clearing detail, Minsu muttered. They're not even sending their main force. They think we're pests. Execute Plan Banshee, Hannah said, her orders clear and quick. All escort groups, engage and distract. Landing groups, begin your descent. Now. The human fleet broke apart like a shattered window. Small groups of ships, fast patrol cutters and refitted miners, shot forward, not toward the Reavers, but at angles, heading for the thick debris fields and asteroid belts that ringed the planet. They fired first. Their weapons were small, but the attacks were annoying, like throwing pebbles at a giant. The Reaver detail changed course to chase them. It was exactly what Minsu had trained for. A deadly game of tag began among the asteroids. Meanwhile, the larger, slower, unarmed ships of the human fleet, old cargo haulers and personnel carriers, lit their engines and dove for the planet's atmosphere. Their path was open for now. Reavers are adjusting, the sensor officer called out. Main fleet is reorienting. They're targeting our landers. Of course they were. The Reavers understood utility. The small fighting ships were an irritation. The big ships going to the planet were trying to take their property. All escort groups, Hannah commanded, her voice rising. Interceptor protocol. Get in their way. Block their shots. Do not let them fire on the landers. What followed was not a battle of lines and formations. It was chaos. It was sacrifice. A human patrol cutter, the Tegu, flew directly into the path of a Reaver energy beam meant for a landing ship. The Tegu's shields flashed once and died. The ship came apart in a silent bloom of metal and fire. An old asteroid miner, its hull welded thick with armor plates, positioned itself like a wall. It took 3 direct hits, shuddering violently, but it held long enough for 3 landing ships to slip into the safety of the atmosphere. The Guangzhou shuddered as a glancing blow from a Reaver missile skated off its forward shields. Alarms wailed. "Shields at 40%, an officer yelled. "Keep us between the landers and that battleship," Hannah ordered, pointing at a monstrous Reaver vessel that was lining up another shot. On the surface, the view was a nightmare. The sky was a bruise of smoke and fire. Strange, sickly light from the Reaver harvesters stabbed down in the distance. The landing ships came down in a rough, rocky valley, the only place not actively burning. The ramps dropped before the ships had fully settled. Marines in environment suits poured out, setting up defensive positions. Engineers scrambled to unload the heavy projectors. Choi Yuna stumbled out, the ashy ground crunching under her boots. She looked up. The sky was now lit with new lights, the flashes of the battle in orbit. Friends were dying up there to buy her these minutes. "Set them up here." "Here!" she shouted, her voice crackling over the suit radio. Her team worked frantically, assembling the large panels and power units. High above, the price grew. Another human ship vanished from the tactical screen. Then another. The Reavers, annoyed now, were closing in. The Guangzhou was surrounded, taking hit after hit. On the ground, a Marine pointed. "Contact! Movement!" From the rocks at the far end of the valley, shapes emerged. They were faint like heat haze given form. They shimmered with a weak, fearful light. They were small clusters of shifting color huddled together. The last Vel. They pulsed with a slow, dying rhythm of pale gray and frightened yellow. Yuna's equipment powered up with a deep hum. She took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence. A beam of pure, gentle light shot from the projectors. It formed the image she had designed in the quiet of the lab. A soft, pulsing green orb, wrapped in a shimmering protective shield of gold. It hung in the ashy air, a beautiful, impossible lie in the middle of hell. The Vel stopped, their fearful gray flickering paused. They watched the light. Yuna held her breath. This was it. This was the only message that mattered. In orbit, the Guangzhou's main screen flickered. A Reaver battleship filled the view. Its weapons glowed, ready for the final shot. They were out of time, out of tricks, out of space to run. Hannah looked at the dying world on the screen below them, and then at the enemy before them. The stubborn, illogical mission was seconds from its end. On the bridge of the Guangzhou, the end was a bright, silent point of light on the main screen. The Reaver battleship's forward weapons glowed with a vicious purple energy. They were charging for a final, point-blank blast that would cut the flagship in half. Alarms were a constant, screaming background noise. Lee Hannah gripped the command rail, her knuckles white. There was nowhere left to go. "All power to forward shields," she said, her voice calm in the storm of noise. It was a useless order. The shields were almost gone. It was the only order left. Kim Min-soo stood beside her, his eyes fixed on the tactical screen showing the surface. The little green and gold light of Yuna's projector was a single, fragile pixel in the Valley of Ash. Down on the planet, the world shook. A Reaver harvester beam, miles away, sliced into a mountain range, turning rock to vapor. The shockwave rolled through the valley, making the Marines stumble and sending a rain of fine gray ash over everything. Choi Yuna ignored it. Her whole world was the reaction of the Vel. The small group of shimmering beings had gathered before her projected light. Their own colors were shifting slowly, from fearful gray to a soft, questioning silver. They were reaching out with thin, light-based tendrils, almost touching the golden shield in the hologram. Then one of them pulsed, a specific, complex pattern of blue and white. Yuna's computer, linked to her helmet, gave a rough translation on her visor display. Pattern recognized. Query. Shelter? Tears welled in Yuna's eyes, mixing with the grime on her face. "Yes," she whispered, though they couldn't hear her. She worked the console, building a new sequence. The projector shifted. The golden shield around the green orb opened, like a flower blooming, and then gently closed around it. Affirmation. Safety. The Vel pulsed again, a warmer, softer color. They began to move not away, but toward the human perimeter. They were trusting the lie of light. Above, the Reaver battleship fired. But the shot never hit the Guangzhou. From the debris field, a dying human ship, the mining vessel Busan, its engines dead and half its hull gone, used its last burst of thruster power. It slid directly into the path of the blast. The Busan vanished in a flash, a final sacrificial piece of armor. The explosion buffeted the Guangzhou, spinning it violently. Hannah was thrown to the deck. The lights flickered and died, replaced by angry red emergency strips. "Report!" she yelled, pulling herself up. "The Busan, she's gone," a voice said from the darkness. "Reaver battleship is retargeting. 15 seconds. The cost was absolute. The human fleet was shattered. On the tactical screen, only a handful of green dots remained, most of them still playing a suicidal game of tag with the Reaver hunters among the asteroids. The plan had worked for moments. But the Reaver main force was now fully focused, and the humans were out of ships, out of ideas, out of time. Hannah looked at the main viewport. The battleship's weapons were glowing again, brighter this time. This was it. She thought of the Vel seeing this new flash in their sky. Yet another explosion of violence. She had failed. Suddenly, the Reaver ship's glow flickered. Then it died. On the tactical screen, the entire Reaver fleet stopped moving. Their energy signatures, which had been raging, began to drop. "What's happening?" Minsu asked, his voice raw. The sensor officer worked his damaged console. "I'm reading a massive power down across their entire fleet. Their harvesters on the surface are retracting. They're disengaging." It made no sense. The Reavers had won. They were seconds from total victory. Then, the wideband comm channel crackled to life. It was the same bored, synthesized Reaver voice, but something was different. It wasn't contemptuous anymore. It was coldly, professionally annoyed. "Earth Fleet, this is a formal notification. Your defensive actions have increased the cost-efficiency ratio of this harvest to unacceptable levels. Continued engagement represents a net resource loss. This biomass is now classified as contested negative yield. We are withdrawing." There was no further explanation. On the screens, the jagged Reaver ships turned in unison. Their engines flared, and they began to accelerate, not toward the planet, but away from it, back into the deep black from which they came. They left behind the scorched world, the broken human fleet, and the last pocket of Vel without a second glance. The bridge of the Guangzhou was utterly silent, save for the crackle of damaged systems. The crew looked at each other, stunned, not daring to believe it. Hannah understood first. Minsu had said it in training. The Reavers were locusts. They were not warriors. They were calculators. They did not fight for honor or hatred. They consumed where consumption was easy. The human fleet, by being so stubborn, so illogical, so willing to throw away ships and lives for no tangible resource, had changed the equation. The Vel were not worth this much trouble. The biomass was now too expensive. They hadn't won a battle. They had failed a cost-benefit analysis. And in doing so, they had saved what was left. "Surface team," Hannah said, her voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. "Report." Yuna's voice came back, filled with static and wonder. "The Reaver beams. They're gone. The sky is clearing. And the Vel, Commander, they're coming into the perimeter. They're showing us, I think it's gratitude." On the surface, the Marines lowered their weapons, standing confused in the sudden quiet. The Vel beings moved among them now, not with fear, but with a gentle, pulsing light of soft gold and serene blue. One stopped before a Marine and extended a tendril of light, touching the soldier's armored glove. The light swirled where it touched, a pattern too complex to understand, but its feeling was unmistakable. A profound, gentle thank you. In orbit, the remnants of the human fleet drifted, broken and bleeding. Above a world they had pulled back from the edge of silence. They had not been heroes in a glorious fight. They had been a stubborn obstacle, an irrational variable. They had been a people who cared when the universe did not. And for the Vel, still singing their quiet song of light in the valley below, that had made all the difference. The silence after the battle was heavier than the noise that came before. It was a deep, aching quiet, filled with loss and with a strange, fragile peace. The Reaver fleet was gone, vanished into the starless dark. They left behind a broken planet and a broken human fleet. Aboard the Gwangju, the crew moved slowly. They put out fires. They sealed broken sections. They tended to the wounded. The lights were dim. The air smelled of burned wires and sweat. Commander Lee Hanna walked through the damaged corridors. She stopped to hold the hand of a young engineer whose leg was trapped under a fallen beam until medics arrived. She said nothing. Her presence was enough. Kim Min-soo worked on the bridge, coordinating rescue operations. Small shuttles moved between the surviving human ships, taking the badly injured to the less damaged vessels. The list of the dead grew longer on his screen. He did not look away from the names. Each one was a person who had answered the call. Down on the planet, the ashy air began to settle. The Marines had set up a proper camp. Field hospitals were established. Engineers started building more permanent shelters from ship materials. They were careful, quiet. They were guests in a place of great pain. Choi Yuna sat on a crate, exhausted. Her projectors still glowed, but the message had changed. Now they showed simple, slow patterns of blue and green renewal, mixed with the golden shield. Before her, the Vel had gathered. There were perhaps 200 of them, a tiny remnant of a world. They were no longer a fearful gray. They shimmered with soft colors, watching the humans work. One Vel being, slightly larger and pulsing with a gentle, leader-like rhythm of violet and white, approached Yuna. It extended several tendrils of light. The light played over her projector, then reached toward her, touched her chest, where her heart was. A warmth spread through Yuna, not a physical heat, but a feeling. It was a flood of images and emotions, sent directly into her mind. She saw crystal forests from 1,000 different angles, memories from 1,000 different Vel lives. She felt the joy of sunlight through a prism, the comfort of the hive mind's song. Then she felt the sharp, collective terror of the attack, the crushing grief as millions of lights went out forever. And finally, she felt the overwhelming, wordless gratitude for the sudden, shocking shield that had appeared from the stars. The Vel removed its tendril. Yuna realized she was crying. She hadn't just been told thank you. She had been shown what they were thankful for. She had been made a keeper of their memory. "We will remember them with you," she whispered to the being. It pulsed slowly, a deep blue of understanding. Weeks passed. The humans did not leave. They could not. Too many ships were too damaged to make the long jump home. And they would not abandon the Vel. They began the slow work of healing. Human engineers and Vel lightweavers worked together. The Vel showed how their world used to channel light and water through the crystal formations. The humans used their tools and surviving technology to help clear the poisoned areas and plant new, basic life forms to clean the soil. It was not about rebuilding the old world. That was gone. It was about helping the new one begin. In the wider galaxy, the reaction was cold. The Galactic Concord issued a statement. It said the Orus incident was concluded. It noted the Reaver's withdrawal. It did not mention human actions. It simply stated that the local conflict was over. Earth's sanctions remained. Their membership was still suspended. They were still pariahs. Park Jun, helping with communications on the surface, listened to the official bulletins. He felt old anger, but it was weaker now. He looked out of the shelter door. He saw a Marine sharing her meal ration with a small, childlike Vel that was glowing a happy yellow. He saw a human medic gently treating a Vel's light form where it had been injured, using energy from a ship's battery. The official silence of the galaxy did not matter here. Here, something real was happening. One evening, Hannah and Min-soo stood on a ridge overlooking the valley. The first new plants, engineered for hard conditions, were tiny green shoots against the gray. Among them, Vel moved, their light gentle on the new leaves. Above, the twisted remains of human ships hung in orbit like strange, protective moons. "The council is asking when we're coming home," Minsu said quietly. "What did you tell them?" Hannah asked. "I told them we are home," he said. "For now." Hannah nodded. She looked at the scene below. This was not a victory. A victory would have meant going home to cheers. This was something else. It was a choice. It was a shared scar. "We will need to send a ship back eventually," she said. "For supplies. For more people who want to come. This will be a long project." "Earth will be divided," Minsu said. "Many will say we wasted lives for nothing. And many will say we saved a future for someone," Hannah replied. "Let them argue. It is better than the silence." That night, Yuna and June worked together on a new transmission. It was not a distress call. It was not a military signal. They combined their skills. June set up the emitter. Yuna, with the help of the leadvel, programmed the message. They sent it on the widest possible band, aimed at the stars, not at any council chamber. It began with the terrible, screaming audio that the Concorde had heard. It lasted only a second. Then it switched to the true signal, the beautiful, dying light song of the Vel. Then it showed human ships, small and brave, flying into the fire. It showed the last, fading blue pulse. And then it showed the new light, the green shoots, the human and Vel working side by side. The golden shield, not as a lie, but as a promise. The message ended with two images. The official Concorde dismissal notice. And next to it, the simple sight from the ridge. The two species, together on a broken world, rebuilding under a quiet sky. They did not ask for a reply. They did not ask for forgiveness or recognition. They were just bearing witness. They were saying, "This happened. We saw the song. We answered. This is what came after." In the silent depths of space, the transmission traveled. It would take years to reach most places. Some who heard it would dismiss it as human propaganda. Others would be confused. But a few, on quiet outposts or on worlds that remembered their own scars, would listen. They would see the light and understand the silence it broke. And they would know that in a dark corner of the galaxy, two kinds of beings had found each other, not because it was logical, but because it was right. The great chamber of the Galactic Concorde was silent. It was a hollow, expensive silence, bought with perfect acoustics and advanced dampening fields. Light from 100 different stars shone through the vast viewport, illuminating the representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species. They floated or sat or perched in their designated areas, their faces or facsimiles of faces lit by the soft glow of data streams. The item on the agenda was the Horus distress signal. The signal had been repeating for 3 standard cycles. It originated from the Vel, a species on the far edge of the galactic rim. It was a raw, pulsing wave of data, filled with chaotic sensor readings. Thermal spikes consistent with orbital bombardment, atmospheric readings showing toxic contamination, and a screaming audio frequency that grated on the nerves of every species that heard it. One by one, the senior members gave their analysis. The Talvarian delegate, its scales shimmering with indifference, spoke first. The Vel are a phototrophic hive mind. Their technological index is below the threshold for Concorde protection. They possess no fleet, no strategic weapons. The representative from the Krill Consortium, a being of pure logic housed in a smooth drone, added cold numbers to the air. A military intervention to halt the identified Reaver forces would require a fleet commitment costing more than the total estimated resource value of the Vel homeworld and its 3 moons for the next 2 centuries. The economic imbalance is unacceptable. Others nodded or made gestures of agreement. The signal was not a call for help to them. It was a spreadsheet. It was a cost-benefit analysis. The Reavers were a known, if unpleasant, element. They were locusts, moving from system to system, stripping worlds of usable biomass and minerals. They did not conquer. They consumed and moved on. Fighting them was always a net loss. The Concorde had long ago decided it was smarter to let them pass through unimportant regions than to spend lives and credit to stop them. The Horus sector was the very definition of unimportant. The human delegate, a man named Samuel, had been listening with a tightness in his jaw. Earth was a new member, its seat still warm. He watched the others, hearing the flawless, unassailable logic. It was all correct. By every measure they used, saving the Vel was foolish. Samuel cleared his throat. The subtle shift in his biosignals drew a faint flicker of attention. Delegate Samuel of Earth recognizes the economic and strategic assessments. He began, choosing his words with the care of a man walking on glass. But the transmission is not just data. It is a cry. It carries the empirical evidence of a genocide in progress. Does the Concord's founding charter not have a clause about the prevention of species annihilation? The Talvarian blinked slowly, a gesture of profound boredom. The clause applies to signatory species of sufficient developmental capacity. The Vel are not signatories. They are, for all functional purposes, fauna. Intelligent fauna, perhaps, but fauna nonetheless. Their loss, while regrettable, is an ecological event, not a political one. Samuel felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. He thought of Earth's own history, of moments when cries for help were dismissed as local conflicts, as regrettable but distant affairs. He saw the same polished, impassive faces that had allowed such histories to unfold. The transmission shows they are sentient, Samuel insisted. They are aware of their own destruction. That alone must warrant a response. The krill drone emitted a soft, pitying hum. Awareness is not a metric. Value is a metric. The Vel have no trade, no technology we lack, no alliances. Their awareness only means they suffer. Ending that suffering is not our mandate. To expend Concord resources would be to steal from species that have earned protection, to give to a species that has not. It is an emotional argument, Delegate Samuel, not a logical one. The vote was called. It was swift. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy registered their decision. Non-interference. The Vel were to be left to their fate. It was the only sensible choice. Samuel was the last to vote. Earth's single seat held no power here. A yes vote would be ignored. A no vote would be a betrayal of every principle he believed his world stood for. He looked at the projected image of the Vel world, now tagged with a red conflict zone, a void marker. Earth, he said, his voice flat in the perfect silence, abstains. A ripple of mild disapproval moved through the chamber. An abstention was a political gesture, a weak protest. It was, in their eyes, another sign of human emotional immaturity. The Concord Chancellor, a serene being of light, finalized the record. The Orus situation is declared a local conflict. The non-interference protocol is now in effect. This matter is closed. The session moved on to the next item, tariff adjustments for transstellar hydrogen. The Vel and their dying song were forgotten. The official dismissal order was drafted, signed by all major powers, and broadcast across the galactic network. It was a clean, bureaucratic end to a messy, distant problem. Far away, in a small listening post orbiting Earth's moon, a young communications officer named Park Jun received the bulletin. He read the Concord's dismissal with a frown. He had been monitoring the raw Vel signal for days, fascinated by its complexity. He found the official conclusion to be too neat, too final. It bothered him. While the galaxy moved on, he opened the original signal file again. He decided to look past the screaming audio and the alarming sensor data. He decided to look at the parts the Concord had filtered out as meaningless noise.